I think that the kids should be monitored, missing the fact that you would be monitored by this. And I assume y'all wouldn't be the happiest about that. Anyway, I want to be clear here before we keep going. There are a whole host of different debating topics. I think that people get strung up in this idea of like debating is just like this abstract thing where you're debating either very snooty topics about politics or about like deep issues in international relations. And that is something we're going to talk about. And it is actually very interesting. It's not as, super complex as everybody makes it out to be. But at its core, debating is about debating issues that are important and debating about issues that matter to people on a day-to-day basis. So I think that what's interesting about a motion like this and what happens in a lot of other debates, is people are able to bring forward, arguments that come from a place of them having gone through what this debate is talking about and being able to give arguments from that perspective. So yeah, I think that this was all very strong and very good. Fair. So, sorry. Let's just think briefly about, some things that are important to consider when we talk about what's being debated, right? The first question that maybe is important to ask ourselves is like, will the kid know that you are being monitored, right? If you found out like tomorrow that for the better part of the last 5 years or however long you guys have had regular access to the internet, your parents have been monitoring every single thing that you're doing on the internet, how would that affect your relationship with your parents? Could your parents keep this a secret for all that long? And I think that this is an important question because, there's a difference between not knowing that you're being monitored and your parents not really doing anything about that monitoring and being fully aware about what's happening. Yeah, what's up, Elva?
Can I see the topic again?
Oh, for sure. This house believes that parents should monitor their kids' internet usage.
Okay, thank you.
For sure. So that there are many different questions to consider, but I figured, asking 8 different questions here maybe wasn't the strongest idea. But there's also a question to ask about what are parents going to do with this kind of information, right? Is your parent going to see that, like, I don't know, you spend a lot of time messing around on the internet and maybe not all of it studying or not as much time studying as they want you to study? And are they going to use that to punish you? Are they going to use that to be harsh on you? Or are they going to use this to your advantage, right? To learn about, for example, bullying or other kinds of issues that you might be going through, but might not feel comfortable telling your parents about. How is it that they're going to use this information? What motivates them to use this information in one way or another way? Might be an incredibly important consideration in a debate like this one. Then there's Samuel, what's up?
Wait, are we supposed to like answer the questions or?
Right now, I'm just like kind of making you guys think about the questions because like the reality is, there are arguments on both sides for these questions, but I kind of want you guys to just think about them a little bit. At the end, you can like give some of the answers that you guys have had. There's another question about like the rights to privacy, right? Do you have a right to privacy when you're 14 years old, right? If so, how far does that right go? There are many other questions that are at play in a debate like this, which is why I think this is an activity that's really interesting and fun at its core. Because a simple topic about, should parents see what websites their kids are going on can extend outwards into a whole host of different topics and different questions that maybe, you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. What if you accidentally open a game? It's kind of like I didn't kill you for the dress thing. I mean, like, there's the thing, right? It depends on the context is what's going to happen in a lot of these cases. So there's a few different arguments. Like I came up with like 2 very simple arguments on each side, which is like, so the left side is arguments in favor of doing this. The right side is arguments against doing this. I realized my spacing got a bit messed up. Whoops. But it's like in favor of doing this, you can make arguments about like, it lets the parents know what their kids are up to and doing. And this is a point that many of you guys brought up. Samuel, do you still have a question or something? No? Okay. So it's like, are there things kids won't tell their parents? I mean, are there? What things might a child not want to tell their parents? What kinds of things might children not want to tell their parents?
On like messing around on the internet instead of studying.
Yeah, what else? I realize that this is a really funny question for me to ask you guys when there are other parents in the room. So don't snitch on yourselves potentially. Keep that in mind. But yes, you might not want to tell parents about when you're messing around on the internet when maybe you shouldn't be. But also like maybe you wouldn't want to tell your parents about like oh, Eric, what's up?
What if you make like I'll kill you for that dress mistake? Like you accidentally open a game, but you don't want the game to be open.
Sure, right? There's certainly ways where this could be misinterpreted. Maybe you're, on a chat room, like in a chat room, showing my age. You're like on Facebook Messenger. I'm still showing my age. Maybe you're on some sort of app, messaging people a bunch, right? And it's primarily for like homework reasons or to just talk about school or whatever. But it just looks like you were messing around the whole day. Yeah, there's certainly room for this to be misinterpreted. And the problem is it means that people are being punished for things that genuinely they shouldn't be punished for. Yeah, that's certainly something to think about. So there's certainly arguments about like what might children not want to tell their parents, right? Like, maybe you don't want to tell your parents if you're getting bullied. Maybe you don't want to tell your parents if like, you're mad at them about something, right? But maybe parents benefit from knowing some of these things, right? There's a question to be asked here about like which things should they know? Like they should know that you're getting bullied. They should have the ability to do something about it. But if you're talking about like how you're pissed off at them or something, maybe that's something they shouldn't know because it could lead to very bad outcomes. But certainly there's an argument about that. There's also an argument about keeping kids safe, as you guys pointed out. There's a lot of bad things on the internet, right? Like I remember when I first started having my own computer, how horrified my parents were that I would like get a virus that would just kill the whole laptop immediately, because I was, I think, 13, 14 years old, who had no idea what I was doing, right? But there's also incredibly inappropriate, dangerous, violent material out there, that maybe people shouldn't have access to, that you should be able to restrict from your own children, right? And on the flip side, I believe that almost all of you would figure out that you're being monitored in some concept. Yeah, so if a kid doesn't want his or her parents knowing about something, does his or her parents have a right to find out without the kid's permission? That's a really interesting question, right? Because, on the one hand, you might have somebody say, well, what if that kid's safety is in danger? They should have a right to know if their kid's safety is in danger, even though their kid doesn't want them to know that. On the flip side, you could say, like, sure, but in a lot of circumstances, this isn't about safety. This is about just like smaller, minor issues. But if you're monitoring them all the time, you don't really have the ability to tell the difference there. You also have a question about like finding this out, right? Like if your parents start talking to you about like how much you were gaming over the weekend, despite the fact that you were in a different room from them entirely, and maybe they wouldn't have known you were gaming the whole time, right? Or they mentioned something about a conversation that you had with a friend that you hadn't yet told them. I think that these kinds of mistakes could be likely. And it means that you find out that they've been invading your privacy, right? How does that affect your relationship, right? If at 12 or 11 years old, you feel like you can't trust your parents with your secrets, right? How does that affect you when you're 15, 16, 17, 18 years old? Maybe you have bigger problems than at younger ages, right? That might be a really important question to ask. As one of you mentioned earlier, it's about feeling like you're being watched all the time. That can have really bad mental health outcomes, right? If an adult doesn't want another adult. So the question about like, would an adult get to monitor other people, I'd also say is rather interesting, right? Because, there's a difference in the relationship between a parent and a child and an adult and another adult, right? Like, the relationship my dad has with me is different than the one he would have with his friends, right? So yeah, there's also something to say about privacy, right? Because, privacy is important. You should be able to share what people know about you, right? You should have control over what people feel and think about you, right? Because it's not just about like dumb questions about school all the time. Sometimes these are really important questions about like your identity or about your emotions and mental health and stuff like that, that you should have the right to be able to control how this information is dealt with, right? There's a whole lot of different kinds of arguments that can be made. So I ask you guys the question, what kinds of arguments might you want to add on to this, or what kinds of questions does this debate make you think about that maybe I haven't already spoken about? Any other questions or arguments or something that this kind of topic makes you think about? Okay, let me read up the chat again. It seems like you guys have a much more fun time debating each other in the comments. Not the comments. Wow, I feel like I'm a YouTuber suddenly. No, it feels like you guys have a much more fun fighting each other in the chat, and y'all are 75-ish people. I can't read that many of them. So I'm gonna let you guys keep on fighting each other in the chat. But yeah, this is all these questions, all these arguments that come to mind are things that we'll be doing a lot in our own debating class, and are things that you're going to be able to get to learn into developing them into longer, more thorough, more detailed, more well-explained arguments. And hey, if your parents are tracking your own internet and you don't like that, maybe you could use this to help win that own fight. Dear Lord. But yeah, thanks guys. Do you guys have any questions about debating or debating class or anything to that effect?